Greetings, citizens. We've already been through the top 10 things you need to know about 2000 AD, and now we're going to focus on our greatest character, Judge Dredd himself, the ultimate lawman of the future, and I'm joined by Keith Richardson, our graphics novel editor, to talk a little bit about Judge Dredd. And with 37 years of stories, there's a lot to catch up on that you don't necessarily need to know in order to read 2000 AD. But if you want to pick up some of the classics, then we're going to run through the graphic novels that you need to be reading now in print or digital. Keith?
The essential Dredd.
The essential Dredd. Well, let's start off with Case Files #1. Start at the beginning. What if somebody were to go for this route? Yes. What kind of thing can they expect?
Well, it's basically the foundations of Judge Dredd and what he's all about. It's great as well because in this particular volume you see a kind of evolution of the character. John Wagner and Carlos Esquire and Mick McMahon are kind of finding their kind of feet with the character, and it basically is a recipe for some really interesting stories. And what I really like about it is how quickly they establish Mega City 1 and the citizens of Mega City 1, and it's a great read.
Okay, now the next way that you can get into Judge Dredd is to skip ahead to Case Files #5. Now these are the UK editions. These are also available in a slightly different format in the US, but exactly the same content. People often get a bit confused when we recommend Case Files #5 as a good starting point. But do you want to tell us a bit about why this is a great volume to pick up?
Well, it's again, you know, with Judge Dredd, I mean, you can kind of jump in anywhere really within the first 10 years. Yeah. But when it comes to kind of the purest essence of Dredd and Mega City 1 and what it's all about, I mean, you've got the Apocalypse War, which is arguably the best ever Judge Dredd mega epic. And I would say that it could take the Pepsi Challenge with any big American comics major epic story arc and stand head and shoulders above it. This is like the creme de la creme of Judge Dredd right in this book. You've
also got the Dark Judges in here. If you pick up Case Files #3, there's a story in there that introduces not just Judge Anderson, Dredd's psychic colleague, but also Judge Death, who's an alien super fiend from an alternative dimension where, well, they basically decided that because all crime is committed by the living, therefore if you make life a crime, the reoffending rate is fairly low.
Exactly.
Perfect logic. Exactly. Yeah. In Case Files #5, you've got the Dark Judges, where Judge Death's undead cronies, Judge Fear, Judge Fire, Judge Mortis, all appear and wreak havoc in Mega City 1. So that's a very good place to start.
Not only that, but if you like Brian Bolland, if you've read The Killing Joke, put it down, kids. This is the best Brian Bolland artwork and the best ever Judge Dredd panel. Yeah. Gaze into the Fist of Dredd. I say no more. Buy the book, you'll find out what it's all about.
Talking about the best Judge Dredd stories ever written, this, for me, I think is
your favourite?
Well, it's not just my favourite. I think unarguably it is the greatest story, and it is Judge Dredd America. Now, it's written by John Wagner and illustrated by Colin O'Neill. This came out in the Judge Dredd magazine in '91. It was one of the stories that launched the Judge Dredd magazine as 2000 AD's sister publication. And the great thing is, it's not really a Judge Dredd story.
Not so much, no.
How to talk about it without spoiling it? It's one of those stories that asks some really profound questions about Judge Dredd and his world.
In fact, he's an out-and-out bad guy in this particular story.
Very much so, very much so. At the end of the day, Mega City 1 and Justice Department, it's a fascist state. Yeah. It's a totalitarian regime where people are subjugated and crushed under the rule of law. Now, Dredd can be played any number of ways. It can be a hero, it can be an anti-hero. As Keith says, in this he's an out-and-out bad guy. But this asks really profound questions about the nature of freedom and law. There's a fantastic quote at the beginning that Carl Urban himself has said was a real influence on his portrayal of Dredd, which is justice has a price and the price is freedom. So for a character that's often denigrated as being two-dimensional, it is real deep, meaningful.
It is, yeah, it's layered.
Yeah, so
really layered.
Not to spoil it too much, but if you want a quintessential story that will sum up all of Dredd's world and the complexity of the character, you can pick up Judge Dredd.
That's another great thing about John Wagner's writing. Dredd's got it's got many different tones. You can kind of dip into many different genres. You can have funny stories. You can have deeply profound stories. That's one of those. I mean, I love the humour, but this is a real kind of palate cleanse of people that are getting slight. You know, if you're not too much into the comedy or you've read too much of the funny stories, this is brilliant.
It also marks the beginning of the kind of modern phase of Dredd, where the 2000 AD had moved to full colour, and you started to get a very different kind of storytelling. Because around about this time, he was writing The Last American.
That's right. But this is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
Really serious take on the character and quite ballsy. I don't think that you would have another writer kind of write his character in this way in kind of mainstream comic books. It just doesn't happen.
No, it's really worth picking up. Next up, we have a bit of a crossover. We've been really lucky with Judge Dredd 2000 AD that we've had some crossover properties that not only really work, but are canon as well. You know, because they take place within 2000 AD itself. They are part of the universe, and this is Judge Dredd versus Aliens. Now, this is actually being reprinted later this year with the cooperation of Dark Horse in a Predator versus Judge Dredd versus Aliens omnibus. Now, what's so great about, because crossovers don't have a particularly good history, do they?
No, the kind of pedigree is pretty bad, but I mean, this is a fantastic crossover. Obviously, it's written in a sort of way so people not used to Judge Dredd, kind of Aliens fans, can kind of get into the universe really well. So you can start with this and get a good feel of Dredd's universe. Again, find out what Mega City 1 and the Judges are all about. But it's also a really good story with fantastic artwork, and I think the two are married perfectly together. Henry Flint kicks out an amazing Alien, and Andy Diggle writes some fantastic horror. So.
Yeah, Andy Diggle, of course, known for The Losers, Green Arrow, all sorts of stuff in America. Henry Flint, who's just done the tie-in comic for the new Aliens game, which is premiered at San Diego this year, which is absolutely fantastic. So definitely, if you're a fan of Aliens, definitely worth picking up. It's a great little primer for the Judge Dredd universe as well.
And it proves that crossovers can be done properly.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm going to go with yet another personal favourite. I realise this is cheating a little bit. I'm going to recommend The Pit.
Good
now,
choice.
I always sell this when we do conventions, when people are asking what it's about, I say this is Judge Dredd does The Wire, because it's Dredd gets assigned to a particular sector that's really run down, loads of corruption, it's a dumping ground for all the bad judges, and it's his job to clean it up.
That's right. For slightly older people, I would say it's Judge Dredd meets Hill Street Blues.
Showing your age there, Keith,
well,
a little bit. But it's fantastic. Again, there's a lot of Colin McNeil work in there. John Wagner at the height of his powers. In the way that America created the modern phase of Judge Dredd, this was like the new renaissance at the end of the 90s. After 2000 AD had been through a little bit of a lull. I don't think there's anybody who wouldn't accept that. But this really brought Judge Dredd back. It's a fantastic multi-part epic, but it's got an ensemble cast, so it's not just concentrating on Judge Dredd. It introduces characters such as Judge DeMarco, who was to go on to have quite a profound effect on Dredd's world, so another good one.
Yeah, yet another really strong female character in the Judge Dredd universe.
Next up, we have Mechanismo, which is another strip that ran in the Judge Dredd magazine in the 90s. And again, there's another one that heralded a new phase of Judge Dredd's world. Do you want to tell us a bit about it, Keith?
Yeah, Mechanismo is the kind of introduction to the Mechanismo program. It's basically robots being introduced into Mega City 1 to enforce the law. Obviously, they don't do it really well, and Dredd is called in to kind of clean up the mess. For me, personally, it's one of my favourite strips because I just like big robots. So if you like big robots, big guns, and lots of action, this is perfect.
What I like about this is when the robot judges are introduced, they are based on Dredd himself. In the strip, he wrote a book called Dredd's Comportment, which is basically his comments on the law of Mega City 1. So the robots are programmed with that, and they are unflinchingly harsh. There's no humanity to them at all, which is kind of ironic considering Dredd is the one that comes in and goes, well, these robots have no humanity. Of course, well, they're based on you, Dredd. You have no humanity. So
which makes for some gloriously dark, delicious, funny moments in the story.
And it's got wonderful art, Colin McNeil artwork. Colin's a bit of a constant for all of these, isn't he? A really definitive.
He's up there amongst the best Judge Dredd artists.
Yeah, yeah. Well, people talk about Bolland, people talk about McMahon and Esquerra. I think Colin really does deserve to be mentioned amongst the best.
Without a doubt.
And last but not least, we have the Day of Chaos. Now, I've already mentioned Day of Chaos on this video once already. Tell us a little bit about mega epics, what role they play within Judge Dredd's world.
Well, the mega epics in Dredd's world, they really do change the world completely. There's nothing that kind of remains unscathed afterwards. I mean, they're not just there to kind of take up space. They really do have huge consequences. If you look at the Apocalypse War, for example, where Mega City 1 was attacked by the East Meg 1, you had millions of people dying, you had like a chief judge being killed by Dredd himself. It kind of completely reset Mega City 1 Judge Dredd universe. And this is the exact same thing. Day of Chaos, you have a story that's been building since the Apocalypse War, without giving too much away. There's a faction of East Meg dissidents who basically are out to get revenge for what happened during the Apocalypse War. And this is the consequence of the Apocalypse War in this story, and it's so massive, it's not contained to one book. We've actually got 2 books.
Yeah, and also there's another volume called Day of Chaos Fallout, which deals with the stories that come afterwards. So it's other writers than John Wagner dealing with what he did to Mega City 1, which was leave it in ruins, really.
This is it. And you always hear the term game changer. This really is. This is not just like, you know, mainstream comics hype where they say the universe will never be the same again, Spider-Man's died, or Captain Forever's dead. They always come back about a year later. No, this has consequences. The Dredd world will never ever be the same again after this story.
And again, Colin McNeil featured in this one along with Ben Wilshire, Edmund Bagwell and Henry Flint, who's probably one of our best finds of the last sort of 10 years or so. Even though he's been working for us for longer than that, he was working for us in the 90s, but it's really in the last sort of 5-10 years he's come to his own.
And again, I think people are so quick to use the term epic when referring to certain stories, and the real meaning of that word's been lost. I think this is actually an epic story. And it's quite amazing that after all these years, John Wagner can still kind of produce epic storylines like this. A lot of people, when they're looking for old epic stories in comic sphere, they're always referring back to strips that were written by a certain bearded writer back in the 80s, or something that's occurred in the 70s or 60s. This is not that old, a couple of years old, and it really is an epic storyline, and hard to beat.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to know where Mega City 1 is now, this is the storyline to read.
That's the one to read.
All of these are available both in print and digitally through 2000adonline.com. Keith, I want to thank you very much indeed for taking the time to talk these through. Hopefully we've given people an idea of the kind of stories that they should be reading.
Indeedy.
Yeah, brilliant. Yep.